Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Clara, and today I'm here to talk to you about the new Natasha Denona Lila palette. Now inside this palette does have a mirror and you can fold it back all the way, and it's filled with a lot of interesting colors. There's your kind of neutral like gray browns, and then you have your purples, your pinks, your oranges, your golds, and also this really interesting color in here. And this is kind of like a reddish brown with a green overlay. So today I've created 3 different looks, one with a more dark look using this really interesting dragon bite shade, and a second really bold look using the purples and the pinks and this kind of bluish violet color in the palette. And then lastly, I created this kind of more neutral, slightly warm look. And for that one, I was recording half of it, but I forgot to press record in the beginning, so I'll just kind of talk you through that. I'm not really going to say too much about the price for the Natasha Denona shadows because they are really expensive, and to be honest, whether or not it's worth it is entirely up to you. And how much you feel like you would enjoy this palette. I personally own the green brown and I really enjoy that one, but I will say between the two I feel like her formula has improved quite a bit. I know that one was the first full palette that she released, and I always have to do my eyes with that one before I do my face makeup because I get a lot of fallout with certain shades. And this one I only got just a little bit of fallout with one of the shades, maybe a little extra got on the brush. Definitely the fallout was nowhere near as bad as some of the shades from the green brown palette. And despite the fact that that palette had a little bit of fallout, I still really enjoy Natasha Denona shadows for a particular reason. And everybody talks about how like pigmented they are, and they are very pigmented. But I feel like the actual magic of these shadows is the finish on the eye. So when you look up really close at the finish, it's not really just like a shimmer shadow. There's something really like extra about it, and when it catches the light in certain ways, it's one of those shadows that you really just like want to stare at it. It's that good. So I would say the magic is more about the finish of these shadows. Now, just as a default with any Natasha Denona shadow, I do mix my Too Faced Shadow Insurance with the Too Faced Glitter Glue Primer, and I focus the glitter glue more on the lid just to kind of get these shadows to stick. So now that we've talked a little bit about how to apply them, let's jump into talking about each of the colors. The one thing I kind of felt like this palette was missing, just for me personally, is more of a matte like brow bone or transition color. Even though this one down here, Helio, is a kind of brow bone transition color, the way I've seen her use it, and it did kind of work out today for me. It is a metallic shade, and most of the matte colors in here, let me point them out for you. There's these two, there's this one, and this one up here. And you can see that most of them have kind of that like gray mauve undertone to them. This one looks very brown in the pan, but it still has a little bit of that grayness, although this one is really a warm kind of red berry color. And just in case you're wondering, these, which one? Oh. So funny, from the side this is a completely different color. So looking at it from one angle, it's actually almost the exact same red brown as this shade. It's slightly redder, and then when you turn it, it has like a very strong green shift to it. So for one of the looks, I actually tried applying this over the top of this because I thought it would kind of enhance the effect of the green sparkle. And basically I feel like I could have skipped this or maybe just used it to blend out the look because these are really pigmented. And we do have quite a good assortment of light and dark shades in this palette. For the look I have on my eyes today, I blended out these two together in the crease, and then I went into the center of the lid with this really bright orange shade, which is called Cyclone. I went into the outer third of the lid using Purpure, which is actually kind of a like pinky purple. And then I went into the inner third of the lid with this color Magnolia. So together those created a really strong kind of sunrise effect where it was very like golden, orange, and then pink on the outside of the lid. So I actually wanted to tone it down a little bit. So I took the shade Helio just as kind of a wash of champagne over the lid. And again, these are really pigmented, all of them. So you do have to be careful how much you're applying because it did mostly obscure the colors, but I think you can still see a little bit how that yellow and orange and pink shines through in the lids. And then I took this color Layla on the lower lash line, and it looks very dark in the pan, like a charcoal kind of color. And I'm sure it would be much darker if you applied it with a finger. But when I applied this color with a brush, it was more like a wash of gray, almost like a shadow under the eyelashes. And I really like the effect that that gave. And then I took Magnolia again on the center of the lower lash line. And then I took the shade Juno on the tear duct. And this is actually a really, really bright, like silvery shade. And since it is a very cool undertone, it didn't quite match the other colors, so I blended it in with Magnolia again, just to give it a little bit of warmth. So I have used every single color in this palette, and I do want to say that they play well together. I do find this is a really fun palette. I'm sure that you can create a kind of more, I'm just going to work, I want something really neutral kind of look out of this if you used mostly like the more matte shades and maybe took like a pop of some color in there. But overall I would say this is definitely a more adventurous palette. So I am going to be comparing this palette to the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette when that one comes out. Just because I was really torn between which of the two I wanted to get. Even though I love my Natasha Denona shadows, I do think I'll get a lot of use out of this palette because there is a great deal of variety in here. There's a lot of fun colors to play with, but at the same time there's enough about this palette that can make it a little bit more like wearable with the mattes and the more like toned down kind of champagne-y shades. You can definitely find your comfort zone in this palette. And to me, I was always really interested in picking up the purple blue eyeshadow palette because I loved all those like purpley shades, but I knew I would never use the blue half of the palette, so that would be a huge waste of money. This one I will say does have more like vibrant mid-tones, more like bold pops of color compared to that purple half of the palette. The purple half of that palette had a lot more like mauves and pinks and like champagne-y colors that were a little bit more toned down and a little bit on the lighter side of the spectrum. These colors are very intense, but they are blendable, and something that I do want to mention really fast. So you will see in the purple eye look that I created, I took the shade Per Se into the crease. This shade actually looked kind of like a very natural shadow in the crease, but what I wanted to mention is I took this shade Magentic, which is like that very bright pink magenta color, and I took it on a light fluffy brush and I just went over the crease, over this gray in the crease with that color, and that just kind of warmed it up, and it didn't really make it look like super shimmery or like super pink, but it did give a little bit of warmth to that gray. And so that's a really great way to use these kind of bolder colors if you are unsure. And one last thing I want to mention with this palette is I do feel like it's organized very well. With her, the thing is like you can use different rows, you can use different like groups of 4 as looks, and so I think you could see here you have like the gray row, you have the more purple row, the pinks, the kind of more orangey colors, and then the more like champagne-y brown colors down here. And if you look this way, you can also see how these would make a really great look together, kind of like her other 5-pan palettes. And yeah, so I think it's just organized in a really easy way for somebody who's maybe not quite a beginner, because there's a lot of really like intense colors in here, but somebody who's not necessarily super advanced at eyeshadow. Like I'm just a hobbyist at eyeshadow, I'm not a makeup artist, but it makes it really easy to kind of find your way around this palette and create looks. You could just pick any group of 4 and you would get a really pretty look out of that too. I hope that you'll like this video if you have enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll be back really soon with that Huda Beauty palette, and I do have on my lips one of the new Pat McGrath Luxe Trance lipsticks, and I will be picking up a few more of those shades when they launch on the 16th, so stay tuned for that. I will definitely review those for you. I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you again really soon.